Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Tonight on Behind the Headlines, Dr. Scott Morris on Crosstown, wellness, and changes at the Church Health Center. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I am joined tonight by Dr. Scott Morris, CEO, founder of what's now known as Church Health. We'll talk about that a little more. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
And Toby Sells is a reporter with the Memphis Flyer. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you, sir.
Let's talk about that. I introduced it at the beginning of the show as Church Health Center because that's what people have known for what now, almost 30 years.
Right.
You're rebranding as you're moving into Crosstown. Talk about these changes because it's more than just a new logo, which it is, and a new name, but there's some amount of changing of focus. Talk about that.
Yeah, I'm not really sure there's changing of focus, but we're no longer a center. Church Health is far more than just our little buildings on the corner of Peabody and Bellevue now. The move to Crosstown really gives us an opportunity to be engaged in a wider understanding of what health is all about. You know, health is not about the absence of disease. It's about helping people live the life well lived. And that requires more than the doctor to be involved.
And so you'll move when?
We're moving in February. I read it in the newspaper.
Okay, and you're expanding. I mean, talk a little bit about how many people you serve now. Just give people who aren't familiar with what you do. Let's get that out of the way so that they understand what you all do. Right. And then you're really kind of expanding, I think, in a number of ways as you get over into Crosstown. But give people some background.
So our focus is to engage the faith community. We don't ever back away from that on the faith community's role to take care of people who stand in the gap. That has for 29 years been focused on people who work in low-wage jobs who don't have health insurance. That continues to be an enormous need in this community. But it's not just the doctor. Dental care, in 2,500 pages of the Affordable Care Act, the words adult dentistry do not appear. It is not in there. Fixing people's teeth puts their smile back on their face, but it also allows them to get a better job.
Yeah.
Eye care, counseling, substance abuse, and then the whole big array around wellness, especially nutrition.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, there's a whole lot of on all those that are tied to being in Crosstown. But let me get before I get Toby in. About how many people a year do you serve?
Yeah, a year is a complicated thing. In my mind, what I'm confident of, there's roughly 70,000 people in Memphis who depend on Church Health for their health care.
And about how many staff? And you have a lot of volunteers. And give or take, how many people are involved?
So we have 250 paid staff. Okay. We have 1,000 physicians who volunteer with us. It's truly an amazing thing that happens in Memphis every day.
Okay, Toby.
What you'll be moving from 13 different locations across the city, consolidating into one thing. I'm interested in that, in the opportunities that affords you. But I guess what opportunities will that allow you to grow, to do new things, to focus on core things? What are those?
So internally, it allows our dietitians, our exercise folks, our health coaches to be literally in the room with our physicians. Okay. You know, why should it always just be about the doctor? For many people, the doctor is like the least important thing. Changing behavior is the critical thing to help people become healthier. So we designed our clinical space at Crosstown to actually make that happen. But then the partnerships that have now been formed at Crosstown, Church Health Y, not only can you be in the Church Health wellness space, but you can be part of the Y all over the city. And then we formed a partnership with the Southern College of Optometry. Our eye clinic will literally have no walls. The SCO and Church Health space will all be one. And then it goes on and on from there.
And so to get there, you have to have some measure of success. Of course, you've been around for nearly 30 years, and that in itself is a thing. But to make this move and to make this huge thing happen, you've had to have a lot of success over the last few years. Maybe you can talk about some of the success that you've built there that's led up to this moment.
Well, the success is, just about Memphis.
Okay.
The success of Church Health has everything to do with this community, as its generosity, its giving, It's willingness to seriously take care of our neighbors. You know, the people we care for are the people who work to make our lives comfortable. You know, they cook your food, they take care of your kids, your grandkids, they cut your grass, they'll one day dig your grave. They don't complain. But what I have experienced is people understand that and want to reach out and say, how can we lock arms and do this together? You know, we are a true faith-based organization, but that means you don't have to believe the way Scott believes. You know, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, God calls us all to sort of do the same things, and that's what we do, is try to give people the opportunity to give back.
In 29 years, 30 years, and I was thinking about this when I was getting ready to do the show. I've been in Memphis 20 years, and you know, there was no farmers market. Now there are, I don't know, 15 or more, and lots of community gardens, and there were no bike lanes, and now there are bike lanes everywhere, and the Green Line and other paths, and plans for more. That sort of transformation that is about wellness and how people live. Again, back to your point of the doctor being the least important part of this. Has that been edifying to see that people sort of becoming more aware and taking care of themselves? And are those kinds of things like farmers markets and bike lanes and so on, are they available to the working folks that you deal with?
Right. So we have enormous challenges, but the opportunity, and I really believe Crosstown will help us get there in a big way. I think food, for example, is really the unifying factor at Crosstown. And really at the center of that will be the Nutrition Center run by Church Health. It has two big components. One is something called culinary medicine. We formed a partnership with Tulane Medical School and a guy named Dr. Gourmet. He actually was a successful chef in New Orleans, goes to medical school, learns that you don't learn anything about nutrition in medical school, which I can attest to is right.
Yeah.
But this is all about teaching medical students, doctors, not just in Memphis, across the world, about how do you actually eat better? And you do it by actually getting in the kitchen and cooking.
Yeah.
And this will be open to other people to just learn cool things cooking. The other piece of our kitchen will be in partnership as a commercial kitchen with Memphis Tilth. So all these programs you've talked about have actually now come together, working together. Our kitchen will be their focus.
Right.
And the issue of food deserts in Memphis is complicated. With many of our patients, you don't solve the problem by giving a 28-year-old single mother working 2 jobs fresh fruits and vegetables and tell her, now go home and spend an hour and a half cooking that food.
Yeah.
There's a 100% chance that will not work. So we've got to find a way to give her healthy food for her children in a way that is affordable and that she can prepare it in a reasonable amount of time.
And it just recently announced that Curb Market, which is a store, a grocery store, locally sourced grocery store, small, that opened in Cooper Young in the last year or so, will be opening a much bigger store in Crosstown. And that had been a goal, I think, from Todd Richardson and the other people from the beginning of Crosstown, that there is a food desert up there in some ways. And that locally sourced food would be available. And so you're partnered somewhat with Curb Market. And I should say that the owner of the Curb Market is the owner of the Daily News, which doesn't really matter too much, but I should disclose that. So, but talk about having Curb Market in there, which will bring foods from lots. It's almost like a retail farmer's market to some extent.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the food they prepare that will be sold at Curb Market will actually be cooked in the commercial kitchen of Church Health. So, Peter's decision to come to Crosstown is incredibly exciting to me and to everybody that we work with. But there'll also be on site a 3/4 acre community garden. On the roof. There'll be 100 tower gardens that, if you're not familiar with that, this is a way to, you don't need any earth. It's aeroponically grown.
Yeah.
It's a business run by Juice Plus here in town, but 100 tower gardens will grow enough fruits and vegetables for almost 1,000 people.
Yeah. Look, back to Toby here.
Just thinking about the transition that you're going to start moving in February. When are you going to close the clinic over there on Bellevue and McLean or Peabody?
Yeah. So the idea is not to have a big gap.
Okay.
I know this is probably nuts, and I might regret saying this, but I mean we're going to be seeing patients one day on Peabody, and we're going to be seeing patients on Crosstown the next.
Wow. And the other places out there, I know Wellness, you'll be out of there. You'll be out of the kind of iconic, I think, location of the current Church Health Center. What's going to happen to some of those properties?
Yeah, so we have, it's very complicated, as you might imagine. Our Wellness Center on Union will actually become taken over as classrooms by the Baptist College of Nursing.
Okay.
Our spaces on Peabody will be a combination of behavioral health programs, and then I'm very excited about this, that the Dorothy Day House will take over 3 of our houses to be places for homeless families to live.
Well, and so how do you, Crosstown is in, an area, it's close to an area that the folks you want to serve, but how do you get out in the community? I mean, will you still have other locations separate from Crosstown, or how do you get people to Crosstown who are maybe in southeast, Memphis, or north, east Memphis, et cetera?
Yeah, so this is one of those things that people have always struggled to understand how this works for us, but when I say we have 1,000 doctors who volunteer, most of them don't come on site. They see people in their own office. So I effectively have 1,000 locations.
I've never understood that, which is my fault. But keep going.
No, I mean, so they see people in their own office all over the community.
Okay.
So we have doctors in Germantown, Collierville, South Memphis, South Haven, who are willing to take patients into their own office and treat them for free.
So in that sense, is Church Health, I keep wanting to call it
Right.
Church Health Center, but Church Health coordinates,
Yes.
their care, coordinates those appointments. So they go into whatever doctor's office just like any other patient, but you're essentially almost
Right.
their insurer or they're the person.
That's exactly right, and coordination is the issue. And look, I'm not for a moment telling you that this is easy. It took us 30 years to build the network. But
Yeah.
the amazing thing is there's really not a problem somebody could have from the cradle to the grave we can't take care of, with the enormous support of the medical community in Memphis. So every hospital, every laboratory, 1,000 physicians. Again, this is one of these things that Memphis should be beating its chest over, not because of Church Health, but because of, look at what we're doing to take care of our own community.
And talk a little bit back into the Crosstown building, the YMCA that will be there, how large and how many people will it won't just be treating people through or serving people through Church Health, right? I mean, there are a whole lot of tenants in the building who can take advantage of the Y that will be in there, I assume.
Exactly, and that's part of why our wellness program needed to change, because there'll be 3,000 people in this building, many of whom are fairly affluent. And so that's not the mission of Church Health to deal with that. So you can join the Y, you will have an unbelievable place to exercise. There will eventually be a pool and gymnasium. So we're gonna focus on what we do really well. Issues of nutrition, weight loss, health coaching for our patients. Everybody will have access to that, but the partnership with the Y is one of those things we're very excited about.
Go back to Toby.
It's always interesting. I've known you. I was talking to you before the show, and I've known you for 10 years now. When I got started on the healthcare beat a long time ago, and I would always check in with you and with Church Health as kind of a barometer for the rest of the economy. And I know that our economy is doing better, and the recession seems to have waned and things. But is Memphis keeping up with that? Are you seeing it in your patients and your patient mix and all those things? Are you seeing an improvement in the economy just with the folks that you see?
I'm not sure I am a good barometer of that, because we see the maximum number of people we can every day, and that really has not changed in 30 years. I will tell you, one of the things that has changed in our patient mix is 50% of our new patients speak Spanish.
Really?
Wow.
Right.
Wow, fantastic.
I was at a Latino Memphis event, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, and it was amazing. The numbers they had, 90,000, I think, Latino families, or the number in the workforce, and it was really an eye-opening set of numbers. But kind of along what Toby's saying, over the past, and you've been on the show talking about this before, Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, which you referenced, was rolled out, almost 6, 7 years ago now. Has that changed your clientele? Has it changed your business at all, or I shouldn't call it business, but the way you operate? Because it's had such a big impact on the rest of the healthcare community, or are you in a space where it just doesn't really impact you?
In one word, I would say no. It's made my life complicated outside of our clinical setting, but The answer is no. And until Tennessee expands Medicaid, it will have virtually no impact on the people we take care of. Now, if that were to happen, we will actually be exceedingly aggressive about trying to enroll people into Medicaid.
Yeah.
But our problem right now is that we've actually worked very hard to sign people up on the exchange, and they just can't afford it.
Yeah. Yeah, the options aren't there because, the original plan, it's such a politicized issue, the Obamacare thing, but the original plan was that states would be incented by the federal government to expand Medicaid. They'd get, 100% for the first couple of years reimbursements, and then it slides down to about 90% reimbursement from the federal government. And about 25 states took on Medicaid expansion, and about 25 haven't, give or take, I think is where the numbers, and more conservative states like Tennessee haven't. Is that just maddening for you? I mean, is that this, what advocates of doing it say is this free money is out there to help the people in need who are in a gap, many of them working, contributing. They're not, they're people contributing and working. But so does it just drive you nuts?
Well, it ought to be maddening for everybody, because what is happening is we're taking your tax dollars and we're giving them to people. Your tax dollars are going to take care of the health care needs of people in New York City, and they thank you for that. But because of whatever political reasons, Nashville has said, thank you, but no thank you. We hate the president so much. We would rather give Tennessee tax dollars to New York City. Now, no matter what you think about the Affordable Care Act, we are giving away billions of dollars outside of Tennessee for a reason that I don't see it making any sense whatsoever.
Do you see that changing at any point? I mean, is there any? I mean, maybe with the change when it is when the president, there's a new president going to be in November. So does that change the political dynamic?
I believe so. I think no matter who wins, come next January, Tennessee will do something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what it will be, whether it's Speaker Harwell's plan or whether we actually, get our brains around this and actually go and expand Medicaid and take this free money. But I don't know.
I'll go one more on this, and I'll go back to Toby. The people who've been on the show who said, the state legislators who voted against expansion, some of them have always said, we went through this terrible process some years ago with TennCare of purging people from the rolls.
And it was terrible, is exactly right.
It was terrible, and it was difficult, and it was painful. And if we take this money now that is free for a few years, or is 100% for a few years, and then it's 90%, we're going to run into a jam, and we're going to have to purge the rolls again. And so we don't want to go through that terrible experience again.
And I absolutely would agree that that's a risk.
Yeah. Okay.
In the meantime, we are giving billions of dollars away.
Okay.
And also the state exchanges, if you've been keeping up with that, premiums, they just got state approval to raise the premiums. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee, which is Chattanooga based, got 60% premium increase approved by state officials just last month. Two others, Cigna, Humana, they were allowed to raise rates by 40% or thereabouts because they were ready to either shrink their footprints or leave the state altogether. So the Commerce and Insurance Commissioner, Julie McPeak, allowed them to raise their rates, and that was she caught a lot of fire from that from both sides of the party. Of course, Republicans saying that the increases just show that Obamacare is not working, these exchanges aren't working for people, and Democrats have said that was a political move on their part because McPeak used some language that said that they were very near collapse in the state, and a lot of political posturing going on around that. And while it's not on the official agenda, I don't think, for the state's special session next week, it'll definitely be talked about, I'm sure, as they kind of come around there. So there's some more movement happening around there for sure.
Yeah. So the politics of this, y'all, is beyond my pay grade. but what you just said is exactly why church health has to grow in this community. One of the things I say all the time is that anybody in Memphis is crazy to argue with each other because we have all chosen to live in Memphis. Nobody cares about Memphis except for Memphian. Nashville doesn't. I am 100% sure Washington doesn't. Mm-hmm. So we just have to roll up our arms and take care of our own. And that's what church health does. And we do it in an amazing way, but I can assure you we need your support in order to do this, because no matter what happens in Washington, it will not put us out of business.
And talk about expansion plans, maybe just a little bit for y'all coming up down the road. You have this big new space, new patients, new doctors.
Yeah, so we're going from 27 exam rooms to 62.
Oh, wow.
Just gives you a feel for that. We're going from 9 dental chairs to 24 dental chairs. We'll become one of the largest freestanding dental clinics in America. Our eye care, our behavioral health issues. The problem with substance abuse in this community, y'all, rich, poor, black, white, beyond belief. We just put our head in the sand around it, but we are not putting our head in the sand about it. We're going to do our best to try to, again, engage the faith community to say, this is something we ought to care about. And then, y'all, the issue I will lay down the street over is around immigrant workers. I don't know what our future immigration policy will be, but if you're working in Memphis, you're building a house in Germantown, you've been here for 10 years, you fall off the roof and you break your arm, I believe we have some obligation to help you. And if you come to Church Health, you're going to get the best care that we have to offer.
I don't want to put you in a weird place, but I'm asking anyway. What are the legalities about that? If you just don't ask. I guess you don't have to ask for identification if you're going to treat someone who's fallen off a roof. You don't have to check their diet. At this point, you're just going to help them.
That's exactly right.
And you may know that this person is here illegally, or you may have a sense of it, but it's just not. You're not going to ask, I guess.
Actually, I do ask about whether they are undocumented because it helps me figure out a path of moving forward.
Yeah.
But y'all, we don't have enough time to tell stories, but I can tell you horror stories that you're going, that couldn't possibly happen in America.
Yeah.
But it does.
Yeah.
And we see it every day.
I want to switch back to the building, and there's a high school going in the building, and not at the opening, but in a year and a half or so. Will you guys be involved with that in any formal way, or just sort of informally?
Well, so how cool is this? So one of the things that people don't know we've done for almost 20 years is run a preschool. It's just a mile from Crosstown at Klondike Elementary. You could argue maybe the poorest neighborhood in Memphis and maybe one of the poorest neighborhoods in America. But we have 178 children, and our success rate is amazing. But what we get excited about is those children could eventually come to Crosstown High School. And it could be a mix between children who live in Klondike, who started at Perea, and then they graduate from Grace St. Luke's. Why do they have to go to a private school in the future if you have an incredibly fantastic Shelby County school right there? That's a better mousetrap.
Yeah.
So yes, we will absolutely be involved in Crosstown High School.
Right. Well, this is a bit of a shift, but we've covered a lot. I think you all have covered as well. We've had on the show the changes in the medical district and trying to make that area, which is such a strange area with all these institutions from St. Jude to, well, they're a little out of the way there, but where the Med, and I still call it the Med, where Region 1 is, where Methodist is, and how it's a very unlivable place. And there are 20, 30,000 people who work there. I was thinking, because we're going to be talking about all these wellness issues and health issues, it's fascinating to me that in that area, for most of the 20 years I've been in Memphis, the only thing you could get to eat in the medical district with these world-class facilities were fried chicken, cheeseburgers, and French fries, and not walkable. It's kind of the worst sort of landscape in terms of health, both in living. You got to commute far. Food is just awful.
Right.
Your thoughts on that? I know you guys aren't directly involved. I don't think you're directly involved, but your thoughts on this kind of them looking inside themselves. Does this reflect a little bit more of the medical community going, hey, all we do is we teach you how to do heart surgery, but we don't teach you how to eat well and exercise and avoid the heart surgery.
Yeah. And so the reason for that, believe it or not, has to do with the money.
Yeah.
You're not paid to teach people about how to eat better. So that's why we formed this partnership with Tulane. I absolutely believe that the food issues at Crosstown will be transformative, not just for the Crosstown area, but for all of Memphis. We will be training doctors around how you get them to actually learn to teach people. And then within the neighborhood itself, there's intentionally only 60,000 square feet of retail space at Crosstown. So there will actually be several restaurants there. but 3,000 people, small city, living and working there, and they're going to get bored with the building. And it will spread out into the opportunity to build new restaurants, new food opportunities in and around Crosstown.
Right. But when you were on the show, when all this was announced a year or two ago, and you were very pointed that you didn't want to be a part of gentrifying that neighborhood. It's a mixed race, mixed income neighborhood that's in some ways seen some better times, but does it worry you when you talk about, and you said it before, there's the average income of people working there, it's going to be medium to high. Does that inadvertently gentrify the neighborhood?
Yeah, so we care deeply about the neighborhood just north of us. That's where Perea, our preschool, is. Over the last year, we've had some multiple shootings in our playground.
Yeah.
I'm not good with that.
Yeah.
So the people with guns, I want to leave. But the people who've lived there and care deeply about that part of town, we're bringing them with us. That poor people love art. Poor people love to eat well.
Right.
They don't have to go away. We are doing this together because I believe this is what God's imagination is all about.
All right. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you, Toby. Thank you for joining us. Join us again next week.